Donald Trump has some incredibly goofy comments for us about terrorism and the Iran deal from his speech yesterday, which was supposed to lay out his anti-terrorism proposals. He's very, very confused about the Middle East.
ISIS is trying to infiltrate refugee flows into Europe and to the United States. Iran, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, is now flush with $150 billion in cash released by the United States. Plus, if you remember from 2 weeks ago, another $400 million in actual cash that was obviously used for ransom. Worst of all, the nuclear deal puts Iran, the #1 state sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism, on a path to nuclear weapons.
First, let's get the basic stuff out of the way. That's not true. In fact, the exact opposite is true. The whole point of the Iran deal was to cut off any path they may have had to a nuclear weapon. And that's what was done. So now the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, gets to come into Iran and search everything except their rectums to make sure that they're not enriching past the point that they're legally allowed to enrich for research and for power for their power grid. And so it's an open system of transparency and visibility, and the IAEA can check endlessly to make sure, okay, everything's good here, they're not building a nuclear weapon. And in response, so their end of the bargain is, okay, that's what you do. What we do is, oh, if you meet these qualifications and do the right thing, well, then we release your money, which we took from you. So we did international sanctions, and we froze Iranian accounts. And we just kept their money, billions of dollars of their money. So, yeah, when you make a deal with them, and they uphold their end of the deal, our end of the deal is, okay, here's your money back. They frame it like it's this scandal. Like, oh my God, did you know the U.S. is giving Iran money? Okay, well, number one, you didn't mention it's their money. Number two, that's the whole fucking point of the deal. Did you read the deal? No, you didn't read the deal. I'm sure you didn't read the deal. So that's the first thing. Let's get that out of the way. So he's just factually wrong on that shit. The second thing is he kept doing this throughout the speech. He weaves back and forth between ISIS, 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 big threat, terrorism, problem, ISIS, ISIS, Iran, 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 bad, 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 ISIS, 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 ISIS. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but you get the sense that they're either trying to purposely confuse people to make them think Iran is responsible for ISIS, or Trump just doesn't know and his speechwriters don't know and they actually believe that. Because he said it right there, that Iran is the #1 sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism. So let's put this in perspective. Donald Trump did not know, in an interview with Hugh Hewitt, he did not know the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah. This wasn't that long ago. This was halfway through the fucking primary. He's like, yeah, I don't know. But when I get into office, I'll know so well. I'll know better than anybody else. It'll make your head spin. It'll be tremendous. Believe me. Believe me. So he didn't know. That's a basic thing. If you're running for president, you have to know that. You have to know the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah. It's not a question. You have to know that. You might not know that, but you're not fucking running for president. So he didn't know that. He also didn't know the difference between the Kurds and the Quds Force. Another basic thing you have to know if you're running for president. Trump is saying they're the #1 sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism. Dude, he might not know the difference between Sunni and Shia. Who's the real radical Islamic threat today? It's the Salafi jihadists, obviously. These are ultra-conservative fundamentalist Sunnis. This is the ideology of the Saudi government. The #1 state sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism is the Saudi government. They've been funding jihadists all over the place for a long time. That was the redacted pages in the 9/11 report. Oh, a lot of the funding came from actors within the Saudi government. You know, they said like they've spent billions of dollars building these radical mosques all around the globe. They're obviously the #1 sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism, and on ideology alone you can deduce that. Because Iran, even though they're horrible, they're Shia Islamists. When you look at the attacks that have been targeted against the West from the fucking mid-1980s and onward, across the board, there are Salafi jihadists, the fundamentalist Sunnis. The Shia, it's super duper duper rare that a Shia does something like that. So I don't think he knows these things, man. You can't weave back and forth ISIS, Iran, because you're leaving the impression, oh, I guess Iran is responsible for ISIS. And then when you say they're the number one sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism, that's just factually incorrect. That's nowhere near true. So he might not know, man. He doesn't know the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah, doesn't know the difference between the Kurds and the Quds Force, and now he literally might not know the difference between Shia Islamism and Salafi jihadism, ultra-conservative Sunni fundamentalism. Would anybody really be surprised if that's the case? I gotta tell you, I'd be surprised if that's not the case, given how little he knows about other things, foreign policy-wise. I could have guessed, I could have told you it's likely the case. Because we know, as a matter of fact, there are Republicans in Congress who don't know the difference between Sunni and Shia. We've covered stories about Republicans in Congress who just say it in even more direct terms. Iran is responsible for ISIS, even though Iran is fighting ISIS. Iran is fighting ISIS. And they're like, no, they're responsible for them. Why? I don't know. They're Muslims and they're extreme, so they're the same, right? No, they're enemies. How do you not even know basic theological differences at this point when you're an elected congressperson? And in Trump's case, running for president this deep in, he's the nominee, still might not know the difference.